Welcome to Centennial Conversations, where we look back on 100 years of Rangers hockey with the people who built this franchise. Today I'm joined by someone who needs no introduction to Ranger fans. One of the greatest leaders the sport has ever seen. A 6-time Stanley Cup champion and the captain who helped bring the 1994 Cup home to New York. I'm talking about Mark Messier. We look back at his time in New York, what shaped him as a player and a leader, and the moments that cemented his legacy with his franchise. So, without further ado, welcome Mark Messier. Thank you, Mark, for sitting down with me talking about Rangers history.
Rangers history, and a lot of it.
Yeah, a lot of it. You know, when I say New York Rangers, Madison Square Garden, what comes to mind?
Well, a lot comes to mind very quickly, and I have to say I have to take it back all the way to I was like 11 years old. I was a big Muhammad Ali fan, and it was a fight of the century with Joe Frazier and Muhammad Ali at Madison Square Garden. Of course, I was, I think 1970, I was 9 or 10, 11 years old, listened to it on the transistor radio, and they made Madison Square Garden sound like a cathedral, which obviously now I know it is. But at the time, it just seemed bigger than life. And years later, I was lucky enough to get traded to Rangers and actually experience playing for the New York Rangers and playing out of Madison Square Garden, and the greatest sports venue in the world, the greatest, most famous sports arena in the world. And then up top, original 6 team, all the history, all the great players, all the great people that have come through here. I had the opportunity to talk to my coach and general manager at the time in Edmonton, Glenn Sather, that it was time for us to kind of part ways. And he goes, well, where would you like to go play? And I go, Glenn, if you have a chance, I would like to go play for the New York Rangers. Can you make that happen? And sure enough, he did. And I was able to come and play, and the rest is history.
So, if I go to myself, I come here, I somewhat experienced back in Europe, but over here, I'm a nobody. So kind of starting from scratch. For you, you accomplished so much. You were so experienced. And then, like you said, you signed here in New York. How was that transition for you, and what were your emotions like coming to New York at that point in your career?
Well, I was 31 years old when I came to New York. One of the writers, when I got traded here, said I was actually 62 years old because all the playoff games that I played in Edmonton, really biologically, I was actually a 62-year-old hockey player. So I thought that was quite interesting. But I didn't know what to expect, to be honest with you. I played my whole career in Edmonton. Getting traded, very strange putting on a different uniform. I felt the impact of it very quickly when I got to Montreal, played that first game. But I really felt the impact of coming home to Madison Square Garden on opening night and being named captain and coming out, and all the other captains were on the ice at the time.
The Rangers' newest captain, and the captain who will lead the Rangers into the 1991-92 season, a 5-time Stanley Cup champion, wearing uniform number 11, Mark Messier.
The enormity of the situation, the drought, the 51 years they hadn't won a Stanley Cup. I was excited about it. I was terrified about what was happening. I felt I came in here with a lot of knowledge about what it took to win and how to win. What struck me very quickly is that I was going to have to establish new relationships and new experiences with my new teammates, and everything that happened in Edmonton didn't really matter at that point. I could fall on my own experiences and use those, but I couldn't share them with my new teammates, which I had planned on doing, and then when I realized I couldn't, I went, oh, this is a little bit more than I might have been chewed off. But in the end, I was surrounded by great players. I didn't know the depth of the organization at the time. I didn't know Brian Leetch. Mike Richter was emerging, Alex Kovalev, Sergei Zubov, the trades we made and all that. And, we keep getting back to the same thing. Nobody can win alone. You have to have great teammates around you in order to win. I was blessed with, great ownership at the time. Neil Smith and I got along great. Mike Keenan came in, did a great job. And collectively, we put the pieces together and went on to win the Stanley Cup for the first time in 54 years.
So I just want to try to understand, for those who don't know, to play in Edmonton, in Canada, that's a massive hockey market.
Yep.
But then you come to New York City, which is a massive market overall.
Yep.
We're not talking only hockey now. It's a different animal, right? So how did that did it affect you at all?
I don't think it affected me. I wanted to go to play in a place where hockey mattered. And I knew that coming to an original six team, there was a big enough fan base here where hockey mattered. Boy, I was not disappointed. Hockey matters here in New York. And I got to see that very quickly with the fan base, the passionate fan base, generations of people and fans that have been coming to the Ranger games forever. And so that, and I think that coming from Edmonton and winning those championships in Edmonton and understanding how important it was for the fans to be an integral part of the team and vice versa, we just had to lean into the fan base, lean into that passion, lean into that energy, make ourselves accessible. How we spoke to the media was really kind of sending the fan base our message. And so those are all the tools that you learn along the way that are really important. And for me, I saw Wayne handle the press forever when he was in Edmonton and how much demand was on him. Of course, coming here and being named captain, there's going to be a big demand on the leadership here on the team and myself and all that. But just leaning into that and really understanding that, when you're talking to the press, you're talking to the fan base, and it's important that you send the message. Everybody can write what they want, but we have to have a unified message that's coming out of our dressing room to the fans. And I guess those are some of the experiences when you've been in successful situations that you can lean on, especially coming to a new team, new franchise. I just knew one thing, that when I stood there every day, I had to be consistent and I had to be approachable and I had to be available game in, game out, no matter how good or how bad I played or how good or how bad the team was playing. That you had to be approachable and you had to be accessible to the media.
To play in the city, obviously, there's a lot that comes with it. You were one of the first players to actually live in the city. Talk about embracing the situation, but can you talk about that? Moving from Edmonton, New York City, you choose to live in the city. I mean, I personally absolutely loved it.
So when I got to New York, things happened pretty quick. Met the team in Montreal, came back and played our first game at home.
Big Sweeney has stepped on the ice for that match.
Messier to corner, he scores!
Messier's waiting for it. That big shot by Mike Gardner. Rangers win.
Things were happening very quickly, and we're out at practice at the Rye Playland where the Rangers used to practice, and they had arranged for a real estate agent to take me around and look me for. I said, well, it's going to be a while I can get back into the city. And he go, no, don't worry about it. We're going to go look around Rye here, and we're going to look at some place. And I go, wait, what? We're going to do what? You're going to show where? And I go, I'm 31 years old. I'm not coming to play for the New York Rangers and not living in the city. That's why I came to New York City to live in the city. And at the time, to your point, there was only Brian Leach was the only one living in the city, and I said, I'm sorry, I mean, if this doesn't work for you, that's fine there. So anyways, I ended up getting a place in the city. Brian and I would travel back and forth to practice, and that's one of the reasons why we got so close, and we just spent so much time together, roomed on the road together and everything. But yeah, that's, for me, if you don't have the focus to do what it takes to be successful on the ice, and if you don't have the discipline to manage yourself off the ice, it doesn't matter where you live.
Right.
And it was another one of those examples where building in excuses of trying to protect and this and no, that's not where the focus is. The focus is not there. And by the time we actually won, I think there was like 11 or 13 of us living in the city together. And one of the reasons why we created the green room, originally the original green room of all the NHL players, is because for us, it was hard for the players to kind of get together because there was a lot of players that were living out, would go home right after the games. And the players that were living at the city, myself and Brian, and then a few others, Mike Richter came in eventually, it was hard to connect. So we created the green room so we could all, and it was mandatory for us to go up there and at least have one beer after the game so we could say hello to the families, get to know the parents that were in town, get to know the extended families, and really start to kind of galvanize a team around that way because, it was just more difficult. Mm-hmm. And of course now green rooms are all across the teams, and But that was one of the things that really kind of, and in the end, it almost became the greatest nightclub in New York City. There, it was hard to get into it. We had celebrities coming in there, getting in there,
it was a tough green room.
It was a great green room. Oh my God, it was awesome. It was, but it was one of those really important pieces where you talk about certain things that happen to teams and how teams come together and why they come together. I put a lot of emphasis, which people are going to think I'm crazy, but I put a lot of emphasis on that green room there of helping us really kind of get to know each other, away from the rink a little bit, spending time with each other's families, wives, girlfriends, fathers, mothers, brothers, because that extended family ultimately in the end is very important. And that team in '94 was incredibly close that year. Unbelievable, one of the reasons for it. So I'm thankful I lived in the city.
So this leads to my next question. You know, when I think about you, you know, I got to know you a lot over the years, but also thinking about your career, I do think about your championships, your big games, big moments, but I also think a lot about your leadership. You know, and being named captain of the original six, I want to know what that felt like for you, but also where did that come from? You know, that leadership instinct that so many people talked about so much over the years.
Well, you know, I think for me, you know, I had a father who was a hockey player, and he was a tough right-handed defenseman, but he was one of the guys that kind of fought for his team, and he was a team guy. He understood what being a good team player was, and so I was lucky enough to grow up in that kind of environment about everything's for the team. Everything you do, everything you talk about, you're a selfless server to the team in every situation. The only thing that matters is of how you can contribute, no matter how big or how small. And so team was just, you know, drilled into me from the time I was very young. I saw good leadership throughout my younger careers as a player. I was a stick boy for my dad's junior hockey team that won a national championship, and I saw the way he, you know, coached the kids. I saw him the way he, you know, mentored the kids. I saw him being very firm with the kids, but fair. I saw the respect they showed him in return. And so I saw, you know, how you galvanize a team and the results that could come after if you do it, if leadership is done well. And of course, there's many different styles of leadership. I mean, my dad, I thought, was a great leader. I saw the results that he got, both, you know, personally and the respect he got from the team, but also the team dynamic on top of it. When I got to the Rangers, it hit me when I got to that first game at Madison Square Garden, and they had all the captains on the ice to greet me as the newest Ranger captain. And then you go back into the history and how many great players have come through the team and the franchise, and then the captains. And so I'm following that lineage of captains along the way, and there's a massive responsibility that goes along with that. And of course, there hadn't been a Stanley Cup one here in 51 years. And so you add that, like you know, are we going to be here and just be another footnote like every other team, or are we going to try to do something incredibly special? And if we are, how are we going to go about doing it? And so, you know, leadership comes from many different areas. It's got to come from the ownership. It's got to come from the general manager. It's got to come from the coaching staff, the players, the trainers. I mean, you know, you think about the ecosystem, you know, there's 60-some people with doctors and trainers and rink attendants and locker room attendants and everybody pulling on the same rope, everybody with a unified message, and the captain is a big part of that.
And I remember, we talked a couple of years ago about, you were pretty early about the mental aspect of the game, you know, understanding the importance of mentally being in the right place. I'm sure it must have helped you so much getting into a situation like that, captain, original six, the added pressure, and did you put extra pressure on yourself because the history and because of your role as a captain?
Well, I have to say, when I came to New York, I came with one intention, that was to win. And so if that meant putting extra pressure on me, I mean, I was very driven when I came here to figure out why, first of all, why it hasn't been done, what was missing from the teams in the past that didn't get done, not to try to make the same mistakes. And so, you know, history is your best teacher. I was also lucky enough to have been in situations where we had failed and we were successful. So I was pretty confident that that the lessons I had learned in the past would prevail here, even with the amount of attention and media capital of the world and all that, because ultimately that's just things that you can control. Let's control the things that we can, and then prepare for the things that we can't. And so, did I put extra pressure on myself? Maybe, but I didn't feel overwhelmed by it. I was relishing it. I mean, I was, at the time, I was just, chewing nails at the time. So
You embraced it.
I embraced it. I wanted all the smoke coming to New York, and sure enough, we got plenty of it.
Well, let's talk about 94. The stars were aligned, and you touched on so many different things that needs to happen for 94 to happen.
Yes.
And take us through the year a little bit. What was special about the year? When did you feel like this could be the year? Was that earlier?
Well, I think you got to go back to when I first came here, because the first year we got here, I got here, we won the President's Trophy, and we got, dusted off pretty quickly in the playoffs, and everybody seemed to be, okay with the year, because we had a great year and won the President's Trophy, and disappointing that we didn't do better in the playoffs, but overall it was a pretty good year. And I'm going, I don't see it that way. I mean, what are we here for? Are we here to have a good year, or are we here to win? And so if your expectations don't meet the demand, then things aren't going to probably fall your way. And so I think the expectations had to change and I think we had to start addressing what we're here for. I think we had to start talking about what we're here for. And I think when you do that, you leave yourself vulnerable. Yeah. Because if it doesn't happen, then what? But in my experience, you have to take some risk to be successful. You have to take some risk to be a winner. And to me, it didn't seem to be that big a risk. Yeah. What do we do? I mean, it's been 51 years. Let's figure out a roadmap. Let's teach to the roadmap, coach to the roadmap, mentor to the roadmap, lead to the roadmap of how we're going to try to get there. Let's all get unified on how we're going to get there. The next year we ran into some injuries. Leachy got hurt. We never made the playoffs. So we're the first team, I think, in history that won the President's Trophy the following year, or the previous year, and then missed the playoffs the next year. So now we're getting just trounced by, everything and everybody about the failures and all that kind of stuff. And then we came back the next year. They hired Mike Keenan. And our first victory was over in London when we won the Mustard's Cup. I don't know if anybody remembers that. We went over to an exhibition series over in London, England. And then we started the year, things were kind of a little bit dicey, and not much has changed. And all of a sudden we caught fire and made a couple of changes. Steve Larmer came in, Alex Kovalev started, Leachy started emerging, Richter started emerging, and then we just went on a tear, won the President's Trophy. And, we made some trades, the well-documented trades at the end of that year. We brought in some guys that were grizzled veterans, warriors, had won before, and knew what it took to win, all supporting our young nucleus of Leach and Richter and Kovalev and Zubov and all the great young players that were here. And we just formed this incredible, dynamic juggernaut that went into those playoffs so focused, so ready, so conditioned, so mentally prepared. I think we took out the Islanders in 4, Washington in 5, and then the great series against the New Jersey Devils, and then went on to win. But you don't back into a championship. The championships are planned and well thought out and well executed, and that was a classic example. When you look at that team, we might not have been the most talented team ever, but we were a team in every sense of the word. The way we were constructed, the leadership, the depth, the toughness, the goaltending, all the ingredients that that it takes to win. So again, just lucky again to be surrounded by players that had the same passion to try to win here in New York.
And Mike Richter's holding the fort right now for the New York Rangers. First shot blocked, second shot, score! Ryan Leach gets the goal! Messier shoots, score! Oh, baby!
And it went to 7 games. I want to talk about Game 7 for different reasons.
Yeah, of course.
Let's start with the winning game, Game 7, 94. And I want the viewers to understand what goes through. In my mind, there's nothing better in sports. Game 7, everything is on the line. I played a few, not in the finals, but conference finals.
One of the best records ever.
Pretty decent record.
You are Mr. Game 7.
No, but I enjoy it.
You got to be a Game 7 ambassador.
But, when everything is on the line, I remember always talking about it in the locker room, see it as an opportunity. You have to embrace the moment and not be scared of it, right? Even though everything is on the line. But talk about everything being on the line. Stanley Cup final, Game 7, Madison Square Garden.
Yeah.
What is going through Mark Messier's head that day after, those first couple of years here? We talked about the pressure, the mission of not getting ahead of yourself.
Well, I think for me, I knew we were a good enough team to win. I felt that after we got into, I felt New Jersey was going to be a tough series because they had the second best record in the league, second behind us in the regular season. So I know the series against New Jersey was going to be tough, and it ended up being one of the best series I've ever been involved in. And then looking at the West, if the teams that were left, but on record, we were a better team. That doesn't mean anything, obviously, but at least gives you the confidence that we should be able to take any team out that's left in the West. And it just gets back to that same thing that we always talk about. You got to believe you can win, and then you got to figure out how you're going to win, and then you got to go execute. And that's it. And oftentimes before Game 7s, like what you're talking about, those critical, crucial, pressure-packed games, for me it was always about the night before of allowing myself to envision every scenario that could possibly happen. Negative, losing, what it'd feel like, what I would do when the final buzzer went, when we lost, and the devastating effect that would have on us as a team and the fan base and another team, and just go through that whole exercise. And then you kind of go through, well, what if we do win? So then you go through every scenario about, the gloves coming off, racing to there, hugging everybody, the cup in the air, the whole thing. And so the night before, you're just kind of but as you get closer to the game time, the negative part starts to go away. You start to focus in on more of, the opportunity, and then that goes away. And then what happens becomes crystal clear is how are we going to execute the game plan? And so then it really kind of narrows your focus, and then you trust yourself because of all the preparation you've done, not only from this year, but all the way through your childhood and all the reps that you had done, and you started going through this whole thing about the people that help you put in those positions and your minor hockey league coaches, and you prepared, and all the shots that you took in the driveway, and you prepared for this moment. And so that kind of takes away the pressure that you're putting on yourself for the outcome. And then that goes away, and then it's really about, what do I have to do to execute for my role on the team, and what do we need to execute as a team? And that becomes the mantra. That's what we talk about going out there. And then all this, what it could have been and the what ifs and all that goes to the wayside, and then it's just about executing the game plan shift by shift. And you hear it all the time, just play every shift to shift and period by period and all that. It's easier said than done, but that's actually how you try to do it, because you narrow your focus down to what matters most, the things you can control, and certainly what I could do to help.
And I feel like throughout games in Game 7, throughout certain moments, it's almost like you have to work really hard to pull yourself back to where you need to be, because, again, the moment is so big, there's a lot at stake. So that's half the battle sometimes, especially for a goalie. You need to be in the right place. As a goalie, I always say we couldn't really dictate anything. We only can react to what's going on. So you have to be patient with the game and the opportunities that you might face, right? So the mental aspect of it, and constantly pull yourself back to that moment where you're so in the moment and only think about execution.
Yeah. Well, I can't even imagine from a goalie's perspective when you talk about it in that way. It's true, because it's not like you can go out there and get a hit. No, you can't change the momentum, because I guess in a way you can with a great save or a great penalty kill with great goaltending and all that. And so I think you're underestimating your way of you can contribute in many ways. But Yeah, it's just, you got to believe in yourself. Ultimately, you have to have an amazing belief in yourself, an unwavering belief in yourself. You have to trust your teammates that they prepared, they've done the work, they put in, and then go let it fly. And let the cards fall when they may, but don't, to your point, never get ahead of yourself. Don't worry about the outcomes, what could happen, what should happen. You've done that exercise already. So you know that. You know what it's going to feel like if you lose. You know what it's going to feel like you win. So let's get to the finish line and see which way it's going to go.
Still with the puck. Nice pass to Zubov. Zubov feeds Leach. Leach scores!
And a lead for Kovalev. Sets up Price. Walks and shoots. He scores!
This by Graves. Noonan's backhander save. And they score! Messier! It's a power play goal! Cordell centers, saved by Richter! The waiting is over! The New York Rangers are the Stanley Cup Champions! And this one will last a lifetime!
The buzzer goes off, you realize you're winning, you're lifting that cup. That feeling, did it match what you imagined?
Yeah, I knew the enormity of it very quickly when I came to New York. I knew what it meant. I knew what was at stake. I could feel it everywhere we went. I could feel it in our, we used to have booster club dinners at the end of years. I knew the passion behind the Rangers. I knew 51 years was a long time. I understood, generations of families that had gone to the games had never seen the Stanley Cup in Madison Square Garden ice. People that were no longer with us at that time that were massive fans that were there in spirit with their families. It was unavoidable how impactful playing and trying to pursue that Stanley Cup was. When we won, that eventually, and when we were able to lift the cup, I think that was really a symbolic of all that. When you think about, you're lifting a cup, yay, we won, yeah, but it's really about taking a much bigger, broader perspective of what it actually really meant for us to lift that Stanley Cup at that time.
Game 7, we touched on it, playing in a lot of them. For you, for me, the excitement around it. Your company, Game 7 now, is the first jersey patch in Ranger history.
Yeah.
How does that feel? I personally feel like it's such a good match.
Yeah.
But how did that come about?
Well, I think the Rangers, somehow or another we got connected with the Rangers about looking for their first official patch partner. And Game 7 was just kind of coming on the horizon. We'd created a content series with Amazon with 5 great Game 7 moments. And we're looking at each other going, this is a perfect match. This is everything. It's about, those most pressurized moments in sports, about executing in the moment. That's Madison Square Garden. That's the Rangers. And then my connection with Madison Square Garden and the Rangers, it just seemed to fit so perfectly. So as a former player, as someone that's involved with bringing Game 7 to life in the market and content and merchandise and all that, it's unbelievable, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
It's been a lot of work, but I think ultimately in the end, what's interesting for me is using the learnings that I've had in those Game 7 moments to lend that to our young boys and girls, or anybody in fact, about the tools that are required, the information that's required in order to execute in those moments. And in life, this is what we like to say with Game 7. In life, everybody will have a Game 7 moment.
Yeah.
And are you prepared when that comes your way? Have you put the work in? Do you have the knowledge? Do you have the courage? Do you have the trust in yourself? Do you have the belief in yourself to take that opportunity and turn it into something? And ultimately, in the end, you have to trust yourself in a Game 7. But for me, failure along the way is one of the things that helped me ultimately succeed in those moments. And I think there's massive amount of lessons there that we can share through the lens of sport in Game 7, and then branch out of the literal sense of Game 7s and bring it into music and dance and theater and all that, and ask people what their Game 7 moment is, because ultimately we're creating a community that's all, you know, aligned in the thinking about how can I be better, how can I empower myself to take these moments that have come my way in life and take advantage of them.
It's a great match.
I think so. I think so.
It really is.
Now we need another Stanley Cup.
11 players have had their jerseys retired at Madison Square Garden. And personally, it's a moment I'll never forget, you know, for so many different reasons. I was lucky enough to play your night when they retired number 11.
Yeah.
Can you take us through what that meant to you? You know, obviously it is an incredible moment. Sometimes it's hard to even describe what you feel in that moment, but try.
Yeah,
you know,
I think for me, you know, growing up in Western Canada, you know, watching the original 6 teams, I just wanted to play in the National Hockey League. That was my goal, is one day to play playing road hockey, street hockey, minor hockey, growing up, wanted to play in the National Hockey League. That became a reality when I got drafted by Edmonton. I played for the Oilers. I didn't come into the league thinking that I wanted to be in the Hall of Fame, or not wanting to be in the Hall, thinking I was going to get to the Hall of Fame, or one day having my jersey retired. That, you know, it was not kind of in the scope of my thinking at the time. I wanted to win a Stanley Cup. That was what I was trying to really console. And along the way, things happened. You know, careers extended. You have success, and get into the Hall of Fame. Wow, this is pretty crazy, you know.
And from now on, when I look up at the ceiling and see my banner up there, to me it's going to be a symbol. It's going to be a symbol of the hard work and dedication that all the players that I played with, all the people behind me, and for me, it's an honor to be up there beside Eddie Jacquemin, Mike Richter, Rod Gilbert, and all the other greats here in this building.
The sweater goes up in Madison Square Garden. What? Madison Square Garden? Every time someone comes in there, you got your sweater hanging there. I mean, you can't believe it. So it's hard. To your point, it's hard to put in perspective the enormity of that moment and what it actually signifies, and the people that were responsible for putting you there. And to me, that's really where it really kind of gets down to. And then they take it all the way back to, you know, your minor hockey and the coaches and your family and your fathers and mothers and brothers and sisters and your extended family, and nobody gets up there alone.
Yeah, and then I just remember playing in those games when they retired your jersey, and Richter and Leachy and Gravy, the list goes on. And I just thought it was so cool to be part of that moment, because I could feel the importance of all you guys, the role you play for the Rangers, for the city of New York. So as a player, I thought it was incredible. For me, I was pretty strict preparing for games, so that was the challenge for me, to kind of get back into game mode. But to sit on the bench and to see that and to feel your emotions that night, it was incredible.
Yeah, it was a great night for many reasons.
You said something there, nobody wins alone. You know, you talked about this in your book that you released a few years ago, and obviously you had so many incredible moments in New York. Can you name a few players or people within the organization that you felt, I'm not going to say unsung heroes, but maybe that they didn't get all the attention, but they played a huge part in the team's success?
I mean, I could go on to list 10s, 20s, 30s, so many players. You know, we always used to say, it doesn't matter if the stage is the size of a thimble, there's room for everybody. That's the reality of it. When you win, there's room for everybody on the stage, and everybody will get their recognition in some way or another. Obviously, other players are going to get more and more press, or however you want to measure the attention, but those foot soldiers, those depth guys, the guys that are the unsung heroes that are doing the smaller jobs that don't get as much attention, oftentimes they're the ones that, when you do win, go to another team. And then you sit there for the next year, 2, 3, whatever, trying to find guys just like them.
Yeah, the glue.
The glue guys just like them, because they got all the character, they got all they're egoless. They'll do whatever you can to help the team win, and create great depth, and then are great players in their own right. But oftentimes in a Stanley Cup winning team, you have players in those positions that are overqualified, that could probably go on to another team and play a higher role or a more important role. But on this team, that's what we needed them to do. And they're selfless enough to actually just do the job that's required on that team. And that's ultimately how teams win, is by getting players in those positions to do just that job.
And it's such a good feeling when you're on teams where you feel like everybody embraced their role.
Right.
Doesn't matter the size of their role.
Well,
whatever role they have, they embrace it and they take pride in it. And you can feel that in a room. Centennial year for the Rangers. That's how we started the interview. And you know, you made a huge lasting impression for Rangers fans, the organization. When you think back of your time as a New York Ranger, all the accomplishments and your role you played, what are some of the moments or things that you think of that made you extremely proud?
Well, I think for me, there were so many things when I first came here, because it was all new to me as well. So I felt, I didn't feel like a rookie, because I had 12 years in the league at that time, but I felt like just a completely brand new start as a hockey player. And it was strange coming in to see a different color uniform. You know, there's red pants instead of blue. I mean, everything just seemed strange. And I guess when I look at it, that, you know, the goal was very clear from day one. How are we going to win? And then the journey that we went on together, and then the help that I had convincing players, and this is the way we should try, this is the way we should do, and then them coming on board and showing just as much dedication and perseverance and grit and determination that you actually need. Brian Leach and Mike Richter. I guess when you've won before and you see players win for the first time, it's incredibly gratifying that you're able to share that with someone for the first time. Because you know exactly what it felt. I know what it felt like the first time I had ever won in Edmonton, and all the things that you think about that got you to that point. You know, I came to New York, and then having the experience of these great young players, the nucleus of the team, to take them all the way through that experience of winning the President's Trophy, all the way down to feeling so bad about ourselves because we lost, so we didn't even make the playoffs, and then riding that wave all the way back up the next year, and ultimately winning a Stanley Cup. And, you know, a lot of players play their whole career and never win. And it's not that they're not winners, they just might not have been in the right situation with the right people at the right time, and injuries and all that. So just because you haven't won doesn't mean you're not a winner. But when you do get an opportunity to win, it just is so gratifying, and you know, like you think about the work that was put in, it all makes it so worth it. And to share that, when I think about coming to New York, 54 years at that point, and to be a part of a team that had erased that 54-year drought, and what it meant to people on the outside, the fan base, the generations and all that, and to be a part of that team there, I think is one of the most special things that happened to me in my career.
Amazing. Thank you so much for taking the time. And I mean, I got to know you over the years, but even sitting here listening to you, I wish I had an opportunity to play with you, because but your knowledge in terms of the leadership, it's not a coincidence that, you know, when people talk about you as a player, person, and leader, it's just those are the things. I'm just sitting here. It's like, that's right. It's just so great when you're in a locker room and you have someone, you know, always know what to say at the right time, and because it matters so much in big moments. Yeah. So it was great to
great talking with you always, and your career has been incredible, and for me, you know, sitting back and watching the whole thing unfold and how close you guys got to doing it there, And I know how painful that was, that not able to quite get it over the hump, but not for the lack of effort and the lack of care. And to your point, even getting to that point there, you know that when a team is connected, you guys were connected. You guys knew how to play. You guys knew what your roles were. You had all the intangibles, and sometimes you can control what you can't, and it just didn't fall your way. But what a run you guys had.
It is a good feeling, though, when everything is connected like that.
It should be fun, but that was fun.
Well, thanks again, Mark.
Yeah, good to see you.
Appreciate it.
Good to see you. Great being with you.